Okay, folks, welcome. Council members, we're all here, and audience members, thanks for attending our August 5th, 2021 Gualala Municipal Advisory Council Zoom meeting. This has been going good for some time. Tom will tell you about that in a moment here. We've been having a good history of Zoom meetings. So introductions go without saying. There's the same four council members as there've been for a number of months now. Tom Murphy, our vice chairman, myself, the chair, and then there's Melissa Finley, and there's Donald Hess. Do we have any announcements, council members?
I'd just like to point out that Mary Mobert would not be with us again tonight. We are wishing her all the best in her recovery, but she needs another month. And so I'll be taking notes and we'll write up the minutes afterwards.
Okay, Tom. Any other announcements? Okay, then we'll go into our consent agenda. Individually, we'll go through A, B, and C. We have the approval of the July 1st meeting minutes that Tom did for Mary. Thank you, Tom. Has everybody had a chance to go over those minutes? They were relatively brief, right? 2-pager.
Yes, our shortest meeting ever.
Yeah.
Are there any questions or comments on that?
No, there was one question. I guess it was still the edited version I was looking at, but it was something about our sheriff. It was what did I see? Kendall City? Is that really?
Oh yeah, my father's ancestors actually founded in Boonville, in where the Boonville Hotel is. That my daddy's great grandfather built that. His name was Alonzo Burnham Kendall. My father's name is Alonzo Burrell. And back then it was called Kendall City.
Okay.
Yeah, he actually died, and he's buried there in Manchester at the cemetery right at the intersection of Mountain View and 1.
Okay. Hey, I needed that refresher course because I saw in the minutes when I read them again last night, Tom, and I go, where is he making a joke there or what? But that was real. I forgot from last night.
It was a little bit of a joke, but I put it in there for you, Sheriff.
Okay, I like that.
We have two new guests. I'd like to get their names, please. There's a 408 number, 408-472. Could you identify yourself, please?
There's a...
You're muted. And I also see a 415-404 number. If either of you could take yourself off mute and tell me who you are, I'd appreciate that.
I see names, but that's all, Tom.
Yeah, there's two numbers here.
This is Bill Graham with PG&E. I believe the 408 number is Dave Campbell. He's my project manager for this effort as part of the agenda item. And if I'm not mistaken, Jeanette, does that sound like Ode's number? I think.
Yeah, it might be Ode's number, yes.
And for you guys, for Dave Campbell and Ode, if you hit *6, that should take you off mute if you're calling in.
Hey, thank you, Billy. This is my first Zoom call. This is Ode Burnside.
Thanks, Ode.
Okay.
Yeah, hey everybody.
Sorry
about that. This is Dave Campbell. I'm really sorry about that. Thanks
No
for having
problem.
me.
We're happy.
No problem at all. We're happy to have this big PG&E presentation. You guys are probably going to bat in about two or three innings down the road here. So please let us get through that first part of the meeting and we'll get to you.
So we haven't had this many guests in a while either, so it's a little lengthier with the introductions here. But we've got the approval of the minutes. We're waiting for a motion on the July 1st meeting minutes.
I will move to approve.
You'll move to approve. Okay. Do we have a second from any of the other council members?
I'll second.
Okay, Don Hess will second. Let's take a vote on that. Melissa?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And myself, Robert? Aye. Okay, so we've got approval of the minutes from July 1st. Correspondence, there's 2 new permits or coastal development permits that came in that we'll have to review later on the agenda. 2 of them which are renewals. And then we received another one, another CDP in the mail here just yesterday. And that has to do with, I'd say we just carry that on the agenda under 6E. And I'll bring it up again when we get down to that. That'll be CDP number 2020-0034, okay? So with that, we could slightly amend the agenda, and maybe we could entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda, August 5th, as amended.
Before we do that, I'd just like to note in correspondence, we also got a notice
Oh, okay.
about water supplies, and we're going to talk about that under the ad hoc water committee, which is item 5F.
5F, okay. Actually, I got another item of correspondence, but that could be under Mary Mobert's report. I received correspondence regarding the PO box renewal.
Okay, let's hold on to that.
Okay, I got it down there. Okay, so with those further edits on the agenda, should we make a motion to approve the August 5th agenda?
I will move to approve the agenda
Okay.
as amended.
Okay, Tom, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And Don will second that. Okay, let's take another voice vote on approval of agenda. Melissa?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Robert? Aye. Okay, so we've got tonight's agenda approved. We've got a lot of agenda items, but do we have any public input on non-agenda items this evening? Anyone in the audience? Any of the council members? Okay. Then let's go to Sheriff Matt Kendall for the law enforcement report.
All righty. Well, believe it or not, calls for service have been down. There's been one subject who's been a little bit of a thorn down there. I'm not going to throw his name out just yet. We've had some issues with one gentleman, and I think that the judges probably will not be happy with him. Therefore, we should be getting some movement on changing his behavior. Recently, our zero bail that was implemented due to COVID by the judiciary, that will be lifted. It has been lifted as of today. Our jail numbers are going to go up just a little bit. We're having some good success with our mobile response team. We've got that one young lady who's been hired, and she's been providing a really good service. We're trying to get 2 more hired. One will be, serving the north and coast areas, and then the other will be kind of in and around Ukiah, and then that gives us the 3rd one for those more outlying areas like the South Coast and Cobolo. And we're working hard on trying to get those next 2 hired. So far, the one that we have, I'm pulling up stats right now. We are reducing transported 5150s by meeting them before they get to that threshold and providing services to them, which is the goal in this, because believe it or not, it saves money, it saves time. It's a better way to meet the public halfway before somebody actually goes into that dark place where they actually have to be placed on a 5150 hold. So I'm super happy with that. We've got to stay the course and get the next 2 hired. One of the issues that we're looking at right now, everybody is concerned about water and everybody is concerned about fire danger. And, being on the coast, a lot of people don't pay as much attention to it as what they do inland. The coast is dry. I mean, let's face it, the coast is dry and the coast has some incredible winds. We have to stay vigilant, and we've got to remember that the coast is just as vulnerable as the rest of the county. And so campfires, vehicle accidents, I mean, 93% of the fires caused in Mendocino County are human caused. Let's make sure that everybody is, being super vigilant when they're running a chainsaw, when they're running a string trimmer, a weed eater, a mower. If you don't have a fire extinguisher, I've got one of those pump up bug sprayers that I take with me because I cut firewood in the summer. And I put soap and water in it. And it doesn't take very much soap to make it sticky. Please, everybody, let's be as careful as what we can this year, even on the coast. I mean, most people don't think that microclimate will burn. Well, baloney, we're all in a drought. It will burn. And then we've had some good luck on our burglary clearances. Yet again, you know, everybody seems to know everybody on the South Coast, but let's continue to be vigilant, continue to be good partners and pay attention. I was down in Gualala the other day. I saw a couple of speeds that I was not happy with. A couple of months ago, I attempted to stop a motorcycle who I saw him for about 13 seconds. And by the time that I clicked my lights on, he was gone. And that was in between Gualala and Point Arena on Old Stage Road. Some of these speeds are getting a little excessive, but the good news is while I was down there, I saw a highway patrol vehicle. And so they're obviously working that pretty hard. And then on the way, and as I was leaving, heading back towards Manchester, another highway patrol vehicle passed me, a different vehicle. And so it looks like they're out there in full force. And then I can answer any questions. I'm sorry, I don't have the stats broken down like Lieutenant Comer normally does, but he's been working on a lot of that Redbeard stuff. And so I don't think he's going to be making it in this evening. So does anybody have any questions for me?
The Redbeard issue, what is that?
Oh, that fella down in Elk.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah,
wondering.
Lieutenant Comer's been kind of up to his ankles in that, and he'll be up to his knees by the time the weekend's done. We're still working on trying to take that gentleman into custody.
He's still at large somewhere, huh?
He is still at large, and he's taken up a lot of our time, but we're working on it diligently and doing everything that we can to make sure that everybody stays safe. So is there any questions or comments?
Anyone else? Don, Melissa, Tom? Okay.
All right. Well, I'm
Nothing
gonna
tonight,
log
Sheriff.
off.
Thanks a lot. Stay safe out there, my friend.
Hey, thank you, folks. And you guys stay safe and healthy. Let's all be careful and let's have a good, safe summer.
And Matt, let's try to stay out of
Yeah,
court.
no kidding. Boy, that's something else.
Yeah, let's not get into
Yeah, let's
that.
not get into that one.
No, okay.
You guys take good care.
Thanks for attending. Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have nobody else from law enforcement here, highway patrol or anybody, so let's go on with our main part of our agenda. That's the permit applications before us tonight. First one will be coastal development permit 2021-0009 PG&E. That's to remove 21 trees and brush at substation up on the ridge here in Gualala, including 16 trees on a neighboring property. Council members Tom Murphy and Don Hess went to that site. And then we have quite a few people here from PG&E, the applicant. So
Yes, we
Go
do. Maybe I could take the lead here. I just want to let our PG&E friends know we have a hearing procedure that we follow. There's a bunch of you here. You have up to 30 minutes to do a presentation according to our bylaws. Most of our presentations are much shorter than that. After that, Don and I will make a presentation. And finally, the public will have a chance to comment and the council will have a chance to comment and ask questions before we consider a motion. So I would hope somebody from the PG&E team can take the lead for you and introduce your team, and you can start your presentation anytime you want. And you can share a screen if you have anything you want to show.
Good evening,
did you
everybody.
wanna-
Oh, there we go.
Dave, do you want to?
Sorry about that. Yeah, sure. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dave Campbell. I'm a project manager who supports PG&E's Defensible Space Program. I believe I have on the line from PG&E with me, Billy Graham, who is the work supervisor for the Defensible Space Program. Also, Ode Bernstein, who has worked as the planner and as also the biologist. And then I believe do we have Andrea Schlentz on the line? Or anybody else that I'm missing?
Yes.
Okay, we do have Andrea. Okay.
Great,
You
great.
have Ajaya's on here.
Yeah,
And is there anybody that I missed?
Jeanette.
Oh, and Jeanette Dinwiddie Moore, who's also working in support of this permit and program. So I'll just go right into, oh, I'm sorry, Peter Green is also on the line. He is the contractor with the contractor that would perform the proposed work. He's also a board certified master arborist. He's here to answer any questions you may have specifically regarding tree health and stuff like that. So anyhow, we'll get right into it. So this work is derived from inspections of approximately 200 substations, along with other electric infrastructure that's been ongoing in high fire threat areas across PG&E service territory. The high fire threat areas are defined by the California Public Utilities Commission, and they're primarily areas that are heavily fueled and kind of a woodland type of setting. So PG&E is proposing to remove 21 trees and miscellaneous brush around the substation, primarily to the north, northeast and northwest of it. That's 16 trees as well on the neighboring property. The plan is to create defensible space using a two-zone approach all the way out to 100 feet. That 100 feet is going to span from the energized equipment and or building that's inside the substation. Defensible space is a buffer that is going to go between a building and surrounding grasses, trees, and plants. It's to minimize the spread of wildfire. PG&E is adopting CAL FIRE recommendations for that 100-foot of defensible space. Just to help mitigate any type of wildfire spread or risk. It also improves safety of any type of firefighter that would be defending the private property. It also just generally creates a safe distance, between buildings or between any type of infrastructure or conductor inside the substation from the surrounding vegetation. So with the defensible space work, we'll be spacing or removing trees and brush within that 100-foot space. So we plan to do this work in approximately 1 week. We'll be using a contractor, an 8+ tree. The equipment that we would have on site is more or less a bucket type of truck to reach the trees, a big loading truck to remove logs as needed, and then just a chip truck and also maybe a bobcat type of deal with a grapple on it to help move the material around. We plan to access this work on just from the PG&E property, stay out of the road there. I know the substation does intersect 2 roads. We will have a very good fire mitigation tools on site while we are doing this work, which would include a 150-gallon water tender, typically a compressed air foam system. Also, additionally, PG&E does monitor fire risk conditions all day, every day, and they send out reports on a daily basis. So we will be, not working during any type of red flag condition. We also have mitigation measures in place to reduce any risk of starting a fire during work. For instance, while we're using a chainsaw or weed eater, we'll have a water pump within 25 feet of our work areas. We have fire extinguishers, personal fire extinguishers, and so forth. So again, our defensible space project around the substation would help further reduce threat of wildfire and improve access to first responders. Again, it's in following CAL FIRE's recommendations. So there is an instance here where the vegetation within 100 feet of the substation is adjoining private property, and in that case, we are working with property owners, to review our safety work and develop a path forward. And we're going to propose work if it's permissible. And if not, then we will continue to work with them annually to hope to, bring them into our safety goals and continue to develop that path forward. So other than that, that's pretty much it in a nutshell as far as our project. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Peter, and we can talk about specifically as we're proposing 16 trees on a neighboring property, most of which are one grove of redwood trees. And I would like to turn it over to Peter so he can kind of speak to the health of those trees and the reasoning behind why we are proposing to remove that one entire grove on the corner. So Peter, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. just want to say thank you to Sheriff Matt for his talk on the fire danger in your area. What we're looking at with, I think the group of trees on the corner, they're all regrowth from old stumps. And if you can imagine kind of an original tree that had roots and a trunk, and the top of the tree was all very well connected. Once the original tree is being cut down and then you get regrowth from the stump, the connection between the new tree and the original root system is not as strong and stable as the original tree would have been. So we see a much higher danger of entire tree failure when you have redwoods grown from a stump. So I think our reason for wanting to take this group of trees down is they have a high strike potential. They're tall enough that they can reach the infrastructure in the substation, and we see them as a kind of fairly high likelihood of failure in a strong wind. Also, the forest that used to be around them is no longer there because now we've got roads on two sides. We've got a substation on one side. So these trees are going to be impacted by wind a lot more than they would be if they were kind of in the center of a forest. So we definitely see them as high danger trees. I'll keep quiet now, and then if anybody has any questions, I'll happily answer any questions about the trees.
Peter, how old would you guess those trees to be, or those that growth from that stump?
Not that old. Redwoods can grow pretty fast. I'm just kind of scrolling through to see what size we're looking at. I think they're mostly around about 30 inches. And in diameter, we could see, I don't know, 30-inch diameter in 30 to 40 years under good rain conditions. They grow remarkably fast. And these are trees that have an established root system. So it doesn't have to grow a root system like a seedling would. So it's kind of a jump start for this regrowth. So they're not tremendously old. They're not old growth trees.
But they're definitely weaker than the original. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Huh.
Yeah.
So Peter, I have the height at about 5 or 7 of them, I believe, are over 70 feet high. Does that fit in with your age?
Yes,
view?
and the age, I mean, sorry, the height of the tree is going to be less indicative of age than the girth of the tree. So trees that are kind of surrounded by other trees, you can get them really high, but they're still fairly narrow or fairly small in girth. So you can have a 18-inch tree that's 70 feet tall, just because it was kind of competing for sunlight and putting most of its energy into growing as tall as it could, as fast as it could. So it's much more accurate to use the girth of the tree. And then you've got to kind of think, how much rain did it get over the last 30 years? If it was getting a decent amount of rain, it could probably put on an inch of diameter each year. But yes, you've got, I think we've looking at that clump of trees, you've got some 80 footers and some 70 footers.
Peter, I have a question. Are you talking about there seems to be several different groups of trees there around the substation. Now, are you specifically at this point talking about the cluster of redwoods that are, towards the front of the station as you enter on the right-hand side there? Okay, so that would be the north side.
There's also a few on the south.
Yeah, you're not talking about that stretch of trees on the south near the fence.
No, so those are in neighboring properties, or they're on a neighboring property, and I think we're still working with that property owner to kind of come to an agreement where we could do some work on his trees. So at the moment, we're looking at 21 trees. They are kind of to the north, the northeast corner, and to the east. So facing the street and the right-hand corner.
Right. Locally, we know that as Substation Road, okay? And
Okay.
and I guess we could, if you're looking at Old Stage Road, it'd be at that corner of Old Stage Road and Substation Road, Don.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's-
I know exactly where it is. I was just
You know,
curious what cluster of trees he was talking about. So it's clear now. Thank you.
But say those trees.
So
could they- Go ahead. sorry.
I'll be
Go
I'll
ahead.
be showing those I'll be showing a visual on where those trees are a little more clearly in a few minutes.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that'll be helpful to everyone, Tom.
Any other questions?
What's the possibility of limbing those trees up a certain distance, a certain height? It lightens the tree somewhat.
So
Go ahead.
it's a nice thought. So what happens is you've got to picture the tree as being a lever, and it's an 80-foot tall lever with about, I don't know, 18 inches to 3 feet maximum of root depth. So the taller the tree gets, the greater the leverage gets. And if you cut the lower limbs off, it really doesn't affect the lever arm action. And it actually takes away damping effect. So trees that are limbed up and start looking like a coniferous palm tree, they're actually more likely to blow over because you've taken away all the damping effect of the lower limbs.
Okay.
So the tree is less able to shed the wind force load. So it seems counterintuitive. It seems like, okay, if we just cut half the limbs off, it should be less of a sail, but it actually makes the tree more likely to fall over.
Mhm. No, I kind of anticipated that result, but it would make it a little bit safer around the equipment zones boundary, so to say.
Well, I think the problem is strike potential of the entire tree. I think we're less concerned about, in this situation, strike potential from branches breaking off.
Okay.
Our concern is strike potential in the case of an entire tree failure.
Uh-huh.
So we'd have to shorten the trees. So I'm not a proponent of topping trees, but if we said the functionality of why we want to take these trees away is to reduce or eliminate the risk of the trees falling into the facility. If we cut them all down to about 12 feet tall, we completely eliminate the risk of them falling into the facility. So
That might
I would
not be a
trim the
bad
tree from the
idea.
top down. But then you'd have a maintenance issue where you'd have to trim those trees on a yearly basis, and you're not reducing the fuel. So
Yeah.
not the best idea to cut the tops off, because then somebody in 20 years time will be dealing with trees that are regrown to 80 feet tall and now have even worse attachment points. So you would be encouraging kind of an increase in the amount of failures.
Plus, when you limb up a redwood, you increase the damage potential from falling limbs because they have further to fall and they can gain greater momentum so that they can drive themselves through roofs and
That's correct.
vehicles and people.
Yep.
I learned that with
One last,
my front yard.
and this is Dave Campbell again. One other point I'd like to make is, if we compromise that grove of trees, and redwood trees that typically live in a grove, such as the one on that corner there, and we need to have, if we're following the CAL FIRE recommendations to space tree canopies 10 feet apart, we're going to have to remove trees in that grove either way. So you're just going to take that entire grove that's already defective, it's already old stumps, that were maybe harvested or some other form of damage, years ago, and they've regrown, and then we're just going to make that whole problem worse and worse. And Now, as we maintain it in perpetuity, it's just going to get even worse as the trees try to, regenerate or heal from that type of work. So again, we're proposing in just the best thing to do across the board for fire safety and for our defensible space project is to remove that entire grove.
Mhm.
Hey guys, this is Billy, and I thought I'd chime in because what stands out in my mind is what the sheriff had said earlier in the meeting. The potential for the wildfire risk that I think all of us in Northern California are beginning trying to get our arms around. Not only drought but the potential for wildfire, and I think particularly this facility specifically is in a pretty rural area. And I think, I feel concern about, the substation, but really mainly about the community. We look at these smaller communities and the resources that it would take to battle a wildfire in that area. It's a little tricky. Obviously the town is, the area is just not around the corner from, CAL FIRE, where they've got heavy tankers and equipment and things that could easily dispatch to that location rapidly. There's going to be a little bit of a delay just because of the access issues in that region to fight a fire. And so I feel as if, the community, should be at heightened risk or be, have higher grade of concern over wildfire, just to kind of put that exclamation mark on the what the sheriff had said earlier, is that what we're really trying to do is reduce risk. And the more that we can do that, the better and safer we are, particularly for smaller communities. And that's a big concern. I think we can all see that, the potential for wildfire is real. We see, wildfires continue on to this day, even as of right now. A lot of communities, smaller communities that just don't have those immediate resources to fight a fire. They're coming from a distance, that leads to extended, firefight. And the quicker we can get there, the better. And if we provide, better defensible space around our facilities, we think that that we're providing not only a safe operation of the substation, but also, safer community just because of the nature of our equipment. It is, a substation does have dangerous equipment in it. And it is something that we take very seriously. And we're working really, really hard to not only perform this work here and achieve defensible space, but we're looking at, over 200 plus other substations within the PG&E service territory in high fire threat districts that are, again, in remote areas. They serve small communities. And we would hope that we would be able to perform this work. And knowing that, we all love trees, we all particularly like redwoods. Unfortunately, it's just that these trees in particular, like Peter touched on, they generated from old growth cut stumps, and they were allowed to grow over the last 30 to 50 years, and now they've become a risk to our facility. And we really need to address that just for safety and compliance. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So any other observations that Tom and Don made while they visited the site?
Well, if you look at the site, in sort of a global fashion, all sides of the substation, the fence around it, and the trees all around it, if you're going to do a complete job, then there's a lot more trees that need to be cut down, in terms of filling out your mission of making this a more defensible space, so to speak.
Absolutely.
I could
Absolutely.
sort of,
Go ahead.
I could sort of see the cluster of trees towards the front that Peter was referring to. To me, it's not so much a fire hazard as it is a falling over hazard onto the high voltage transmission lines that are entering the facility right there. You know, those are not far from those trees, and those trees I think are tall enough that if one fell, it would fall on top of the incoming transmission lines. Of course, that would.
Don, excuse me for interrupting,
Yeah.
but I have pictures of that I could show. If you want me to get to that, and then you can join in on that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think we do need some pictures. As a matter of fact, why don't you show them right now so we all see what we're talking about?
Okay. Anything else from PG&E before I start this presentation? Okay. So I'm going to share a screen now. And let me. What do you see on here? Let me do that again. I think I did that wrong.
I got a meeting going on.
Okay. So this is just an introductory slide, and I think we've covered this part pretty well. This is a better overhead of the property. Old Stage runs diagonally from top left to bottom right. You can see the various property owners adjacent to it. The PG&E substation is outlined in black. So here are the trees we're talking about. This is the northern patch up at the top. These are on John Bauer's land alongside Substation Road. And I'll show in a minute the power lines that Don was just referring to. There's a scraggly tree here in the foreground that I have a picture of. And there are a few trees right in front of the station on the corner within the PG&E property. The PG&E property goes right down the side of the substation. And beyond that, it's somebody else's property, the Younger family. And there are numerous trees there that you'll see in photos. Here's a tree picture from across the road looking north. This is the scraggly tree I mentioned on the southeast corner. These are the taller trees that are the main subject of this hearing. And you can see these power lines here. These are the transmission lines coming in that Don mentioned. And these would be, I agree with Don, these would be the primary risk factor. Trees could fall across those and start a fire right away. The idea of one of these trees hitting that substation, it's probably just within range to get to the fence by my estimation, but there's certainly a danger of a tree falling in a high wind or something. I could see that. Here's a picture to the south. Now, here's the few trees in the front of the substation on the PG&E property that are included in this application. However, these taller trees along the side are off PG&E property. These are on the Younger property. What you can't see here is that the Younger house is maybe 200 feet beyond these trees. So if these trees were gone, that household would be looking directly at the PG&E plant. And if you cleared an area out there, it would come almost to their front door in terms of what PG&E is proposing in this application. These trees seem like a much more imminent danger, and I think I speak for Don on this as well, that these could fall in here. And these look like they may have been limbed in the past, at least on the property line. I don't know if that's true, but it just seemed that way to me. You can see a lot more of the trunk here, whereas you can see the branches over here. Just another view looking across the property from the north towards the south. Those are the tall trees on south that would not be affected by this tree cutting project. And another view of those. So what we're talking about is 21 tree removals. And something we didn't talk much about yet is the clearing the brush areas of 17,500 square feet. Includes mowing of grass as well as cutting brush, small saplings, grasses, Scotch broom, blackberry, manzanita, acacia, etc. So in addition to the tree removals, there's that. This would leave the area looking, I think it's fair to say, pretty barren. Safer, certainly from a fire hazard. but you'd see a lot more of the plant from passing on the road. This is an actual list of the trees that would be affected and their heights. The first group is down in the, I think, the southeast corner, and the rest of these are up on the northern corner. I may be wrong about where the locations of these are, but this is a list of the actual trees, their estimated height and diameters. There's one that's 54 inches, I see, Peter. That's probably about half a century old, and another that's 40, another 38. Let's go on. The application talks about improving sight lines for traffic along the highway to make it safer for people coming in and out of the depot. Don and I found this wasn't true. This is looking north from the driveway. This is looking south from the driveway. Cutting those trees down won't have any real effect on this. Now, I also, in follow-up to this, called Ode Bernstein, who was listed as the agent of this project, and asked him about the trees near the power lines, and that generated a response from Mr. Garland, who I don't think is with us tonight, the supervisor for the transmission lines in the north. And he gave us this statement: our transmission vegetation program looks at 100% of our transmission lines annually. You can read this for yourself, but I'll just go to the highlights. Our pre-inspectors evaluate the health and condition of vegetation, prescribe work based on that evaluation. If there is an area that you are particularly concerned about or have noticed changes in vegetation, we can arrange to have one of our pre-inspectors take a look at it. And I view that as a bit of an opportunity for people in the community. We are talking about the power station tonight. We are not talking about the power lines coming away from the station. But if you know of a situation that looks like a problem, it's probably a good idea to let PG&E know about it. I see somebody who's starting a chat here. Oh, Jenny, do me a favor and text me your last name, and I'll include your question here. She was asking about how the forestry people looked at these trees in terms of the potential of them falling. Yeah, I think I think we did, and it's Jennifer Smallwood asked that question. I think they had looked, the PG&E foresters have looked at this. I don't think, and they can correct me wrong if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's been any outside CDF people, for example, looking at these particular trees in this particular situation. To get back on the here. Here we go.
I have a quick question.
Okay. All right, can you hold that till the end,
Sure.
Melissa? I want to get through the rest of these slides. There's just a few more.
Okay.
Now, this is not the first time we've dealt with safety issues at this substation. Everybody on the council now was on the council in 2019 when we unanimously agreed to approve an emergency petition to swap out a transformer. But we asked for some things during that, and this is paraphrased, but we asked for information regarding the use of polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, in the transformers, capacitors, switches, and other substation equipment for the manufacturer's serial numbers, dates of manufacture, and of equipment containing PCBs, and a plan to replace such equipment in a timely manner. The transformer that failed was over 40 years old. The other one in there is 40 years old. We don't know the status of the PCBs in that transformer. So I asked also to Mr. Bernstein if he could help me find these answers, which were listed as conditions for our earlier approval of that emergency application, and were never really fulfilled. So we did get some answers on the PCBs. Mr. Risley, a senior environmental field specialist for PG&E, told us that there are 5-gallon units that cannot be sampled. So they assume the worst case, listed as less than 500 parts per million. PCBs, I believe, and the PGE folks can correct me if I'm wrong, are basically regulated over, is it 500 that they're regulated by EPA? Then there are two 26-gallon units that cannot be sampled. and they assume the worst case and list it as less than 500. There are 2 950-gallon units with PCB concentrations of 50 to 499 ppm. I'm not sure which units those are. I'm guessing they're the transformers. And we have an SPCC plan and containment pond designed to hold 110% of the largest unit, which contains 4,000 gallons of non-PCB oil. And the plan was developed to stop any potential oil release from leaving the site. There is a trough around it, a curb around it to hold that water in, those oil in a pond. And we have not had a reportable release at this station, which is a term for what they're required to report by state and federal standards. Now, there are requirements that PG&E maintain a log of all the PCB laden equipment it has by number, serial number, and other factors. And so Don and I talked about it and came up with a proposed motion, which I'll put on the table. And then we can hear if there's a motion, a second for the motion so that we can discuss it. But we cannot discuss a motion once it's on the table until there's a second. So somebody could second for discussion after I read this. Our draft motion is in the interest of public safety. The Gualala MAC recommends approval of CDP 2021-0009, subject to the following conditions. 1, PG&E will refrain from the use of any herbicides and pesticides listed by the state of California and/or the county of Mendocino as known or suspected agents of cancer, birth defects, or harm to wildlife, including but not limited to pesticides containing glyphosate and chlorpyrifos. And 2, PG&E will comply with Gmac's previous unanimous request on CDP 2019-0029 to provide, and I'm going to insert the word detailed here, information regarding the use of PCBs in transformers, capacitors, switches, and other substation equipment, including the manufacturer and serial numbers, the date of manufacturer, and plans to replace such equipment in a timely manner. For the folks issuing chats here, I'm in the middle of the presentation. I'll get to your chat questions as soon as I can afterwards. So that's the motion that Don and I drafted. And if somebody would like to second that for discussion, then we can take have a council discussion and hear comments from the public.
Okay, Tom, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing and go back to you so we can look at folks face to face and I can answer some chat questions. Let me just look at the chat questions that have come in. Maybe Peter would want to respond to this. This is from Jennifer Smallwood, one of our residents. I'm thinking if these trees are healthy and to the civilian eye, we can just see trees that are close to the power lines, but are actually not a significant risk to the station or power lines. Maybe they don't need to be completely removed. We covered this a little bit earlier, Jennifer, and the feeling was that if we thin them or shorten them, they could pose a significant risk. Whether they could be thinned and shortened to the point where they wouldn't even hit the transmission lines, I'd like Peter or Dave perhaps to address that.
So thinning, no, you couldn't thin them to the extent that they wouldn't become a danger. The thinning would actually increase the danger. So a tree standing by itself is going to be more dangerous than a forest. And then shortening them, if I was pruning a tree in my backyard and I wanted to eliminate the risk of it hitting my house, I could definitely cut the tree to a point where it was short enough that it would never impact my house. But I think that doesn't really kind of fulfill the needs for a clean zone or a reduced fuel zone. So I think that would be up to PG&E if they were willing to look at something like shortening them. And really, if we cut them down to 10, 15 feet, they'll definitely regrow. they're just going to be unsightly and create, I don't know, future dangers of limb failures. If it wasn't near a road, I'd say not really a problem to do that. But I think the fact that it's near a road, there'll be more wind throw, there'll be more pieces breaking off the trees.
This is Dave again, Dave Campbell here. I just wanted to just add a little bit more as far as, CAL FIRE recommendations and the 2 zones of defensible space, to reduce risk here and create that safe buffer from the substation and the equipment and buildings inside the substation. We would have to space the tree canopies again, which would just damage that grove, right? Because redwood trees, they live together kind of in unity in a grove. So we're going to significantly compromise a grove of trees that already has defect just in the form of it growing from old stumps that who knows if they may have been logged or it could have been they could have come down during a fire at some point. But either way, it's just best across the board here for safety, just to remove that entire grove. And some of the other trees on the parcel are, most of them, again, they have some type of defect. Some are just dead and such. So it's just a better bet to remove the trees. Again, it's for safety, it's for defensible space, and to create that safe buffer from the equipment inside the substation.
Are there any other questions from members of the public? I think Jennifer is probably the only one with us from the public right now, or from the council.
Melissa.
I have a question.
Okay, Melissa.
Melissa?
You're talking about lines that are in danger of having trees fall on it. Are these lines in any way being considered to be buried? I know that PG&E has committed to burying tens of thousands of miles of electrical lines underground. Could these be buried?
Hi guys, this is Billy again. I could probably speak to that a little bit. Yes, there is a commitment that PG&E has made to underground, 10,000 miles of distribution line. That does not include transmission. And I would factor in that, the area is in a high fire threat district. So the 10,000 miles that we are planning to underground are in fact in those high fire threat districts. I cannot speak to where we plan to start that initiative and where we would go, whether it be in Mendocino County or if it would be in Butte County or some other county in our service territory. But the challenge that we face there is clearly there's going to be a lot of land right issues. There's a lot of environmental and biological, cultural issues that we would have to work through to be able to get a shovel in the ground. And I do appreciate the idea, but I think in terms of just with respect to carrying that type of risk for an extended period of time until we can, in fact, go ahead and underground some of the distribution line, we are simply kicking the can down the road. I feel as if that we need to reduce risk now, and by removing this vegetation, we are in fact making the community safer. Down the road, again, that's 10,000 miles is going to be over a period of time. And it's not something that we're going to be able to do in the short term. And so to afford a higher level of safety to not only our operation, but to the community, we really need to focus on what we have at hand and what we've been working toward. But certainly the undergrounding is a possibility. But at the same time, that process just by itself is going to require a great amount of effort and cooperation from not only our agencies, but other utility partners. So it's a big undertaking. And, to think that we could do something right away is probably not realistic. I think if we address what we have identified so far, and Peter was to share the details about these redwoods that have in fact regenerated from old stumps and that they have weak attachments and that they're at risk. I think we really need to address that issue in the short term and again, look to the future for further safety measures like undergrounding, distribution conductor. I hope that answers your question.
That answered my question perfectly. Thank you. This is an interim measure because the undergrounding will be too far in the future to protect us now.
That is correct.
We have a question. I'd like to recognize Jennifer Smallwood.
Yeah, I've missed the first part, so this may have already been addressed, but I was wondering if PG&E was going to then, once they take the trees down and leave the neighbors to see this transfer station, if they would be building a fence or some other sort of, some way to mitigate them having to look at a bunch of posts and wires and see people come in and out in their trucks and stuff, if there's anything like that was going to take place.
And Dave, may I amplify that a little bit? There's been a number of questions about the aesthetics. The clear zone around the station would be barren. The trees would be gone. And, a couple of people have asked questions like Jennifer is asking about what mitigation measures could be, whether some brush could be left there that's safer, fire safe, that wouldn't be a hazard to the substation. Can you address, has PG&E considered any of that aesthetic issue at all?
Hey, this is Ed Bernstein. I'm gonna jump in on this one. So as part of the coastal permitting process, mitigation is of course going to be a component of that, and for any kind of visual impacts, visual aesthetics. Now, PG&E is facing a little bit of a tricky situation. In years past, I think it was considered sort of more standard to deal with visual aesthetic impacts by putting in kind of targeted vegetation to limit observation of things like, transformers and substation equipment that you can readily see from the road. In fact, that's why, in a lot of these rural substations, trees were planted, things like Monterey pines and Monterey cypress were aggressively planted in years past to kind of deal with this issue. And so that's part of the legacy that in this sort of new higher fire threat world we now live in, especially in California, that we're having to sort of undo. And one of the unfortunate consequences of that is, substations, which are not particularly beautiful unless you're an electrical engineer, are more visible, especially where, you have houses and residential areas surrounding them. So, we unfortunately have less options to try and deal with the aesthetic impacts. We will be working with Mendocino County to try and identify mitigation that will deal with some of the aesthetic impacts without putting us back into the situation that we're trying to get out of right now, which is too much fuels in the immediate vicinity of our substations. So we're certainly looking at that. We are definitely open to ideas. Fences are something we can look at, but right now, again, we have limited options as far as ability to mitigate aesthetic impacts. And I do appreciate the question.
Did you say you're going to be dealing with that at the Coastal Commission level, or what was that first thing you said there?
Yeah, so as part of our coastal permit, as we work through the process with the county, including obviously, public meetings and county getting feedback from other groups such as yourselves, from, Fish and Game, we're going to look at what our mitigation options are to offset aesthetic impacts, in particular at Gualala.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Hearing none.
Well, I want to ask something. I'm just curious whether, given the motion that's before the council, related, specifically related to the information we're requesting from PG&E, whether any of you who are present in this meeting, I'm curious whether any of you can address our request for this information. Because nobody's spoken about that. Everybody's so far from the PG&E side has just been talking about the plan to remove these trees.
Guys, this is Billy, and I'll let Ode talk about the PCB issue, but I can assure you that I've made a note that that your request for no herbicide use that is noted, and from my standpoint, I don't take any issue with that. So I think we can easily perform our work. You know, just to give you a picture, you know, what we would be looking to do is in perpetuity, we would be mechanically treating herbaceous vegetation like weeds and grasses on a routine basis annually, so that we can maintain that defensible space that we're trying to create in this instance. And the use of herbicide, I can certainly hear you loud and clear, and we would certainly refrain from utilizing any material like that at this substation. And I can assure you that I'll be sharing that information with other lines of business that does work there from a vegetation standpoint, that is not permitted as well. And I'll turn it over to Ode.
Thanks, Billy, and thank you for the question. So regarding operations inside the substation, in particular with energized equipment, that is something that Mr. Murphy did bring up with me when he first reached out, and we did have a fairly broad-ranging discussion before this meeting. The team that is here tonight is really focused on defensible space work. You can kind of tell we are more in the sort of natural resources, forestry kind of side of PG&E, and that the original contact I provided Mr. Murphy, Mr. Risley, who's the environmental field specialist, is going to continue to be the right person to talk to about sort of technical issues related to substation equipment. Unfortunately, we are just not the staff with the technical knowledge to sort of have this conversation, and we do want you to, you know, sort of be able to talk to the folks who have that right technical information, even though it sounds like that conversation may be somewhat tied to our particular coastal application. We're just not going to be the right folks to have that conversation, but happy to continue to facilitate if you don't feel like you're getting answers from Mr. Risley.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that reply and addressing that question. And I think that could be something that happens subsequent to this meeting. And I recognize that the immediate urgency of removing vegetation may be on your minds tonight. We are in the middle of a bad fire season. I am going to suggest modifying the motion that I read earlier to add a third condition saying PG&E will investigate steps to mitigate the aesthetic impact of removing trees and shrubs from around the substation. So I'm going to suggest that we add that, modify the motion for that.
And
are there any other questions?
Do we need a second on that modification?
Yeah, I think I need to make a new motion. I move to modify, well, let me just make this one motion. I'll withdraw my earlier motion and make a motion to, in the interest of public safety, the Gualala MAC recommends approval of CDP 2021-009 PG&E, subject to the following additions. 1, PG&E will refrain from the use of any herbicides and pesticides listed by the state of California and/or the county of Mendocino as known or suspected agents of cancer, birth defects, or harm to wildlife, including but not limited to pesticides containing glyphosate or chlorpyrifos. 2, PG&E will comply with Gualala MAC's previous unanimous request on CDP 2019-0029 to provide, I'm going to make that detailed information regarding use of PCBs in transformers, capacitors, switches, and other substation equipment, including manufacturer, serial number, and date of manufacturer, plans to replace such equipment in a timely manner. And 3, PG&E will investigate steps to mitigate the aesthetic impact of removing trees and shrubs from around the substation. Is there a second?
Okay, I'd be willing to give a second on that.
Okay, so Murphy and Youngling.
So should we have further conversation on that?
I think you're ready.
We already
It's
discussed
up to you, Robert. As chairman, you can go ahead with the vote or take further comment.
My thought was that with the addition of that amendment to the motion is that maybe one could consider just removing the vegetation that's really in danger of hurting the equipment zone, and if that's something that we could discuss further at a later point or as part of that motion that we're making, I would be happy. I don't see, here we have so many areas that we need to maintain. Sure, the substation is one major facility that really is of importance to Gualala. And, you know, we all love our trees, as we said, but aesthetically, to top them wouldn't be that big of an issue to me, as long as we had some vegetation there. And you know, we haven't maintained that area for decades, it seems like, and now we're all in a rush to cut down trees, whereas I'm more in favor of removing all the other vegetation, doing some limbing, even though it might weaken the tree. Redwoods aren't necessarily that prone to uprooting. In my 35 years of experience up here in Gualala, you see other types of tree species that are more prone to the wind throw and falling over versus the redwoods. So there must be another way we could, instead of getting into revegetation or landscaping the area, so to say, just dealing with some topping of those tall redwoods that could possibly fall over because they're so tall, well, 80-foot tall, and damage some of the facility.
What about that redwood tree out in the parking lot in front of the Gualala supermarket, that real close to the post office? That's been the same way. It's an old growth tree, and it got hacked back down to nothing, and it seems to be doing well.
That was actually brought there, Melissa, from way back in the forest, that old growth stump. But that's a good thought, a good point, because if one could do something with those existing redwoods, rather than remove them completely, but make them so that they're somewhat aesthetically pleasing and they're not completely removed, it would take away that looking right at the substation, wouldn't it?
It'd be prettier than a fence, even if you cut it down to 15 feet tall.
I agree. I tend to agree with that, yes. Tom?
You know, I think we're making the message clear here.
Okay.
And I don't think we can really nail down the specifics tonight. I think we need to give PG&E some leeway here. As the motion says, to investigate steps to mitigate this impact. They're going to be dealing with this on the county and the coastal level. So I think that they understand our intent here is to maintain what greenery you can there, shroud the substation, which is, I agree, maybe engineeringly intriguing, but visually it's very impactful for a community that prides itself on environmental conditions. So maybe you guys can work on that and we could just leave it where we have it now. And hope that our friends at the county level and the state level will follow up with PG&E, and that PG&E will act in good faith and follow up on that. And on our other request, I'll be happy to continue discussing it with Mr. Risley to get more specific information. I know PG&E is required to keep that information. We've been trying to get it for 2 years and haven't. The county's aware that we've been trying to get that too, and as is the state and the federal government. So there is an incentive to get that done. I think we've said all we can say about this matter tonight. If anybody else has anything, say it now, or Mr. Youngling, maybe we want to go to a vote.
Yeah, I only wanted to stress the importance of that amendment to the motion, okay? That's all. I think Melissa was in agreement with that. So yes, let's take a vote on that motion if everybody's ready. Okay, everybody ready? Melissa,
Well, what was that? Or did the motion have anything to do with possibly saving the trees and cutting them down short
I think
in
with,
lieu of a fence?
well,
Is
yeah,
that
I
what
think,
that was?
Melissa, yeah, with that amendment that Tom added and that we agreed to when we seconded that motion, I believe it does include that, yes.
Okay,
Do you all
I'll
agree?
vote aye.
Oh, you'll vote aye, okay. Don,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and Robert, I'm an aye. Okay, thanks for all the input. Tom, you're gonna continue to follow up on this. And Don, I'm sure, do we need to write a letter to the county at this point?
I will write the letter unless Don wants to, but I'll be happy to write the letter, and we'll follow up with Mr. Risley as well.
Okay.
And I just want to thank everybody from PG&E. The tone of this meeting is night and day compared to what we had 2 years ago. I want to thank you very much for your cooperation and your help in finding some of these answers, and for the open dialogue, particularly from Ode. I know he's moving on to a new gig, and I wish him well, but everybody's been very helpful on this project. And I think we all have a common interest in making the substation safe and making the community around it safe too, and attractive.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would second those thoughts from Tom in terms of thanking all the people from PG&E and Peter for showing up to sort of explain, what's going on here, so we have a better understanding. Although there are certainly some issues that we would like you to take seriously and address. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Righty. Thank you, everybody. PG&E. Should we move on with the agenda then? Are we ready?
We are.
Okay. We'll go on to the next CDP, which is CDP 2021-0020, Bazzano. This is for a single family home with a garage, a well, a septic system, a driveway, and the removal of one tree located at 46611 Iverson Lane. Melissa Finley and myself, we were handling this CDP. One thing that I have to state is that I'm not sure, and Mary Mobert, our administrative secretary, had her accident, had her fall. And so we may not have been able to get a letter off to these applicants. I myself neglected to contact them, although I did try to reach them by phone here today, and I couldn't reach them. I'm hoping that I could maybe at the last minute invite them to our hearing here. But let me put it this way to you. I reviewed the site, or I went out to visit the site, and I'll give you all my feedback, and I'm sure Melissa read the CDP at least, and we'll give some input, but it's fairly straightforward, folks. Let me just go through with my notes here. This is about a 0.95 acre parcel located on the corner of Iverson Lane and Iverson Road. You just go up a little ways up Iverson Road off of the Highway 1, and it's on the second left as you proceed up Iverson Road. It's a corner lot. I did have also a talk with the planner about this project to see where it's at in the county process. I've looked over the septic information. I've talked to environmental health about it. So I've pretty much satisfied myself with regards to the proposal. A significant area, and I don't know if we if any of you have also looked at that CDP on the county website or anything, but a significant area of the 0.95 acre property is off limits to development due to issues. The ISHA setback is 50 foot because of a Bishop Pine buffer. It reminds me of a parcel that Tom and I visited on the other side of Iverson Road where somebody had removed the whole forest. But in this case, it's one tree that's affecting them being able to put in a fairly good sized home. That tree, it appears to me, has already been removed on the plot map that I have. And when I went to the site, that one fir tree was removed and it's laying there all cut up. So that's not going to be a hindrance to this development. But the home site is pretty much placed into an envelope in the southeast corner, close to an existing well. This existing well was dug many, many years ago. In fact, there was a property owner in this Iverson Landing subdivision area that owned roughly 20, 30, 40 lots, and he wanted to sell them all. And so they ended up drilling wells and performing perk tests on all of those at the same time. So this is an existing well from back in that time. I was checking the water log, the well log on this property, and it's about 175 foot deep, the well, and produces about 3 gallons per minute. So the septic system is an at-grade septic system, and it is sized for a 3-bedroom home. The project, when you read through the application, it's within the height limit that's allowed on that parcel. 26 foot 7 inches is the height of the project. It's about a 3,000 square foot home, so it's rather large. Well, it's large, but it's in, it's in scale with what's existing in that area, either inland from it or west from it. What else can I say on it? There's the down shielded lighting, which is kind of typical recommendation or condition that we see. They'll be hooking up to all the utilities. There's a utility line or a utility pole there that'll be coming off of Iverson Road to a 200 amp panel to service the house. There's a propane tank that's shown on the plot plan. This will interest Dawn. They've got PV solar planned as required by state law. So photovoltaic, is that right? That PV stands for, right, Dawn? I imagine.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so
Yes.
It would be nice if we would have received further plans on this, such as elevation plans or just see the roofing and the siding and all that. But we didn't get that, and it wasn't online. So we sometimes also see botanical reports and biological reports. The floor plans, elevations, but that was not online. So that's why I called the planner to see what they were proposing. What else?
I'd like to make a small correction.
Yeah, please do.
The square feet for the dwelling unit is 1,863. The total proposed building coverage is 3,027, which includes covered parking and accessory buildings.
You're so right, Melissa. Thank you. Okay. I looked at that one figure and I thank you for correcting me on that. Okay. So moderate sized home. Okay. 1,800 square feet. There's a 50-foot setback that it has to meet from the center line of Iverson Road. From the property line itself, it's a 20-foot setback. There's a new driveway proposed from Iverson Road with a culvert. Well, septic system, I think we've covered it all.
Question number 21 and 23, is the proposed development visible from State Highway 1 or other scenic route? That's not answered.
Not from Highway 1, no.
Or other scenic route?
Other scenic route, no. I mean, Iverson Road is not really considered a scenic route, although it's scenic.
Is it or is it not? Anyway.
It's
and
not
question number
officially designated.
Question number 23, does the development involve diking, filling, dredging, or placing structures in open coastal waters, wetlands, estuaries, or lakes? The diking and filling was not answered. Dredging was answered.
There's very little, a minimal amount of grading that's happening on this. I think I saw 4 cubic yards, which is very little.
Oh, no. This is a separate question.
Right.
Does the development involve any of that in open coastal waters, wetlands, estuaries, or lakes? Different question. And it's not answered in the form.
It's not really applicable, Melissa. This is
Okay.
a very level lot. If you're ever driven by that area, there's a lot of level lots in that area. This one's right on a corner. It's quite level.
Well, level lots can be estuaries.
Well, yeah, and then they've addressed it. And when you look at that map, that plot plan, they've done all their setbacks. It appears to me, from the Isha areas, which were defined as being that Bishop Pine Forest.
Oh, an Isha, would an estuary be an Isha area?
Yeah, environmentally sensitive habitat area would include an Isha, would include the estuary, would include wetland, would include all that.
Okay, I figured you know the answer since you'd gone to the site and I hadn't. Okay,
Yeah,
that's it.
okay, but thanks again there.
Uh-huh.
So, I think all the concerns that we usually have on a project like this seem to be adequately addressed. I probably would want to recommend, like we've advised before, that on other CDPs that we maybe that a water storage tank would be recommended. Anything else?
Especially with just 3 gallons per minute for the well.
Yeah, and that was at the time of drilling, so I don't know what it's really like right now. It's always a good idea to have a holding tank, I think, and then for fire protection too. It's it's nice to have water on hand. So I would personally want to make that recommendation on this CDP. And otherwise, I'd be ready to make a motion. Or do you have any other questions, anybody, on this CDP from what you've read? Tom or Don, anything?
I have no questions on it. I think you've explained it very well, Robert. And sometimes it's a pretty straightforward situation. I think what I'm hearing here is that they need to remove the tree. And it's a good idea to build a holding tank. I think that you pretty much have to have a holding tank with a well anyway. I know right now the wells are going dry and lots of people are having water trucked in. Yesterday, the supervisors had a long discussion on the prospect of having 12 truckloads a day come in from the inland areas to the coast because the coast is running out of water. And CBS News yesterday just did a story on the town of Mendocino and how the hotels and restaurants there are struggling to keep enough water trucked in to serve their guests. I was just up in Mendocino yesterday and saw that piece when I got home. It's a very good piece. But I think you should go ahead and make a motion and we can take a vote.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we give our advisory recommendation or to approve coastal development permit number 2021-0020 Bazzano.
I'll get the motion.
Do you have conditions on that?
Well, with the recommendation of a holding tank, with a water holding tank. That was my only condition.
Okay.
Sorry, Mary. Melissa, you want to make a motion on that revised Second on that revised motion, Melissa?
I'll second the revised motion.
Okay, then we'll take a vote. Melissa,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and myself, Robert, aye. And I'll go ahead and write the letter unless you want to, Melissa.
I'll let you.
You want me
You
to?
actually,
Okay,
you actually blocked it, so yes.
okay. Then I'll be doing that. So let's what time do we have? 7:30, getting close to. Let's go on with council matters then.
Okay,
5
old
and 8.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only old business we have tonight is the ongoing report on Gmac vacancies. And I have a couple of updates on this. One is that if you look at the top of tonight's agenda, you'll see a subtle change. There are now seat numbers next to each of our names, courtesy of Atlas Pearson, the clerk of the board, and a redetermination of our expiration dates. Some of which were adjusted by a day or two. I think Don and I were left alone, and everybody, and Robert and Melissa were changed by 1 day. Atlas is in charge of keeping track of who is in which seat number on the council. Each seat number has a particular expiration date. So right now we are occupying seats 3, 4, 5, and 6. And seats 1, 2, 7, and 8, the alternate seat, are vacant. So those will be filled. Atlas will tell us which person will be going to which seat and when their expiration date will be. And that will be happening fairly soon, because yesterday the supervisors approved 3 candidates in their consent agenda with no discussion. They had about 30 items in their consent agenda, by the way, and did it with about 5 seconds of voting. They pulled 1 item out and talked about that for about 10 minutes. But otherwise, they really whipped through that consent agenda, including our part there. I'm not going to reveal the names until there's an official announcement. I don't think it's really my place, but we will have, I do expect to see 3 new members in the council next month if they can get through the process of swearing in.
That is very
and-
good news.
Good news.
I thought everybody would be happy to hear that. I don't know the total number of candidates. I don't know very much about these folks other than what I've read in the paper about them. But I have my fingers crossed that we'll be a better, stronger council for having more voices and more diverse opinions on the council. So glad to see all that happening. And that concludes my report, Mr. Youngling.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a lot of hard stress on all 4 of us for a while now, hasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, then let's move right on to our GCAP committee update. And then Tom.
And I'm going to lead off here with, there was an item that just snuck up on us. I was out for my operation recently, and I owe a public apology to Alexis Kelso, who has been waiting patiently in the wings now for an hour and a half to get her chance to speak. So I think I'm going to put her at the top of the GCAP report.
Okay.
Alexis is, and Alexis, I'll let you correct me after I say this, but you're basically the alternative transportation person for District 1 for Caltrans. Is that correct? And your purpose here tonight is to talk to us about a program that fits hand in glove with our streetscape project, which is why it's under this item, but is not actually part of it. It's a separate program. And I'll let Alexis put this into context. I think she has about 10 minutes she wants to give us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so good evening, and thank you for having me here. My name is Alexis Kelso, and I'm a transportation planner with Caltrans District 1. So thank you for having me here tonight to talk about our draft District 1 active transportation plan.
Well, thanks for waiting around for us.
Yeah, it was lots of interesting things I don't usually get to hear about.
Okay.
So tonight I want to be covering 4 key points. One is the purpose of our active transportation plan. Second thing is to give an overview of the data-driven needs analysis and the results. And then 3 is to report on our public engagement process. And then lastly, the really important piece is where to find the draft plan and how to provide comments. So the purpose of the District 1 Active Transportation Plan is to identify bicycle and pedestrian needs on the state highway system in the 4 counties that District 1 serves, which are Del Norte, Humboldt, Lake, and Mendocino. So there are 12 Caltrans districts across the state, and each district is developing their own plan, but a lot of the planning process is standardized across the state for consistency, to allow us to kind of comprehensively understand what needs are out there and to set targets for improvements. So there are some things that we're able to customize for District 1 to fit the context of our different communities. And we were able to make those adjustments with a technical advisory group, which Tom is a member of that group. So I thank him for his valuable input. One thing that I did want to emphasize is that the plan only identifies needs. So it doesn't, there's no projects identified in the plan, and there's no recommendations made to address those needs. It's just focused on capturing the need. And then later, when a project comes along in the area of any kind, like it could be a pavement project or a drainage project, when those things are initiated, then we will work to address the complete streets need within those project limits. So how we identified needs. One was a data-driven analysis where we used data like the speed limits or average daily traffic or the existing bicycle and pedestrian facilities to look at what needs there are. And so from that analysis, there were these 8 need types identified. One is Main Street sidewalk gaps. So our technical advisory group helped us identify like what a main street is in each of their communities. But it's essentially like where the highway passes through a pretty developed community with lots of destinations like businesses and residences. And main streets are always at grade highways, so they don't include freeways. But for this sidewalk gap, if the technical advisory group identified the area as being a main street and there wasn't a sidewalk present, then that was identified as needing sidewalk. The second one was an inter-community connector need. So this was something we also identified with our technical advisory group. And inter-community connectors are areas where the highway is not quite within a town like a main street, but that provide important connections, like maybe on the edges of town or between communities. So there are areas where you would expect more walking and biking to be occurring than in very rural areas, but where the facility type might be something less than what you would expect in a main street environment. The third kind of need is where there's existing sidewalks, but they're in fair or poor condition. So these are locations where we would need an improvement to bring the sidewalk up to good condition. And then the fourth kind of need is areas where sidewalks are next to roads where the speed limit is higher than 35 miles per hour. And this is more of like a comfort thing. So these are areas where potentially the sidewalk needs to be wider, or maybe there would be like a landscaping strip to give a little more separation between pedestrians and vehicles. And then the next kind of need is where there's stressful pedestrian or bicycle crossings. These are locations where like the speed of traffic and the number of lanes combined with a lack of infrastructure make it stressful or difficult to cross the highway. And then 6, bicyclists are allowed on all of the state highway in District 1. So locations where bicycling is stressful because of like high speeds or there not being any shoulders, those are identified as needs. And then the 7th kind of need is freeway crossings. These are existing on and off ramps where they meet the local road or over and under crossings that don't have any walking or biking facilities. Those were identified as needs. And then the last one is freeway barriers. And these are locations where there's a freeway, but there's currently no way to cross it. And maybe there's a long distance between existing over or under crossings. So these would be opportunities to create a new crossing. In addition to the data-driven needs, we invited the public and our transportation planning partners to help us identify needs. And so this was mostly done by completing an online map-based survey. Our technical advisory group included members from each county, and the people serving on it are from the regional transportation planning agencies or our pedestrian bicycle advocates, transit providers, and people from local agencies. So they helped us a lot with the decisions to tailor the plan, and they helped a lot with public engagement to make sure that we were reaching out to the right groups. So with the technical advisory group, we developed a public engagement plan that really focused on reaching underserved communities and people who haven't been previously involved in Caltrans planning. And we identified like over 400 individuals or organizations that we then contacted via email and phone calls to ask them to please take the survey and share it within their networks. So the result of all of that outreach was that we had over 450 people take the survey, and they left combined over 1,400 comments or identified needs on the map. And so even though our outreach was really focused on reaching underserved communities, only 25% of our respondents identified as a race or ethnicity that was other than white, and only 31% of people reported a household income of less than $50,000 a year. So for comparison, between 30 and 40% of the district is not white alone, and then about 50% of households have incomes less than $50,000. So we could still do a little bit better in reaching those communities. So even though we are close to the point of having a draft plan, the survey is still open and will remain open even when we have the final plan. So at any time, people can go in and still document the needs that they know about for walking and biking. And they can do that either at our survey.caplan.org, which is the Caltrans survey. But then there's also UC Berkeley's Street Story tool, which I know has been used in Gualala to support the application for the active transportation program. So these two mapping platforms are pretty similar. The Caltrans one does limit comments to just pins rather than lines, and it does limit dropping that pin to within a certain distance of the state highway system, whereas Street Story, you can draw lines in addition to pins, and you can drop it anywhere on the map. So if you're choosing to promote one of those as Gmac, it doesn't really matter to us which one you use, because both of them are going to be reviewed when we do initiate a project in the area. So then to the real meat of why we're here, the draft plan is expected to be posted on our webpage by August 16th. So we really hope that if you're interested, you can review it and provide comments, and also share it with the community that might be interested. There's two parts to the plan. There's the summary report, which is a pretty standard PDF document, and it provides an overview of the planning process and some key context and findings. And then the companion piece to that is the story map, which is an online map, and it provides an opportunity to kind of interact with maps and look at some of the existing conditions and findings in more detail. So just a little bit more about what you can expect to find in the report. As part of the summary report, the key terms, purpose, and overview of the plan are all pretty standard text statewide, but then the remaining sections are more tailored to District 1. So the public engagement, you can see how it draws from the public engagement plan that we developed, and then some of our performance and key findings on that. And then walking and biking in District 1 today, describes more of like the context and the existing conditions that contribute to like the safety and comfort of people walking and biking currently. And then the needs for people walking and biking section describes how the data-driven needs are identified, like what I went over earlier in the presentation. And then the next steps gives some good information on how we're going to use the data in this plan and what comes next in implementation. And then with the story map, so this is where you can really visualize all those existing conditions and findings spatially. It's all online, and the content on the page will change as you scroll down the page. You can quickly navigate between sections by clicking on the headings at the top of the map. But as you scroll down the page, you'll see first a text box describing the map that you're looking at. And then if you keep scrolling, that kind of scrolls away and the legend will appear. And then you can actually zoom into a specific area of interest by using the plus and minus buttons on the bottom right of the page. And when you get to the very end of that page is the Explore map. And so this map contains all of the data, every item that went into the analysis and all of the outputs. So if you really want to, you can dig into this map and really look at everything. You can look at it there on that page as part of the story map, but I find it's easier to navigate if you open it by clicking on this box in the upper right-hand corner, and then you can click on layers, and that's where it'll open up all the layers that are available to you. So the next steps is that we will be posting the links to both the summary report and the story map on our webpage by August 16th. And then comments are due to me by September 3rd. And then I have a couple weeks to compile them and send them to our consultants. And then we'll have our final plan at the end of August or the end of October. So we've been working on this for over a year. We started in May 2020. So it's pretty exciting to be this far along and so close to being finished. And we'd really love your help if you can like review the plan and also share it with people. We do have a fact sheet that's available to share via email pretty easily, or you can print it out and put it if you have a community bulletin board or anything like that. And I'm also happy to do more of these types of meetings. So if there's any groups that you think we should meet with, please let me know and I can reach out to them. And that's the end of my presentation. So here's my contact info, and thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Thank you, Alexis. I'd like to lead off with a couple of questions and comments. One, I want to compliment Alexis and her whole team at District 1. I have sat through probably fewer of these meetings than I should have, but they are not the most thrilling meetings in the world, not because of Alexis, but because of the subject matter. It's really nitty-gritty stuff, and it goes on for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes, Alexis. They're long meetings, and there's been a lot of them over the past year. Alexis has worked really, really hard on this. I appreciate everything that's gone onto this. And Alexis, these are related. You talked about the minority participation and low income participation, and you talked about the computer tools used to mark the problem areas. I think there may be a relationship between those two, as somebody who's been doing a lot of user interface and computer work over the years. I personally, even though I've done a lot of user interface and computer work over the years, and I may look old, but I've been using a computer since Bill Gates wrote the first version of Microsoft's operating system. And I find both these interfaces, the Caltrans and the Street Story interface, extremely difficult to use. I've launched objections to this in the past regarding the Streetscape project here in Gualala. There are people in our community who don't have computers, who don't have the computer skills. And even though I do, and I found these things very difficult to give input. The second thing is that we're a very small community. There's only a couple of thousand people in the heart of Gualala, and a a few thousand more in our greater service area. But getting the word out to them is very difficult. We do have a bulletin board in town that people actually stop and read in the post office and in other places. And we will, if you email me that flyer, I'll get it up in a few of those places. And I will also spread the word about these dates and where to find this stuff. I would encourage you to possibly consider taking comments that are just written, that people that just can send you a paragraph or two and say, hey, we need better bike lanes, or there's blind turns here, or whatever. The Caltrans tool does not allow you to pinpoint the locations at all. And when I was trying to pinpoint them to a particular problem area in Gualala, I found I was like a block and a half away in the wrong place, and it made no sense. The street story tool, drawing the lines, is a little bit better, but very time consuming. When you want to point out 15 or 18 hazards in just Gualala, it could take you an hour, could take me an hour to put those things in. And for people who are not familiar with the tool, it could take them longer and limit the effectiveness of your data collection and skew your analysis. So I wanted to give you those comments. That said, we'll do the best we can with this. I do have a question to follow on this, is how do you gauge input from a small community like Gualala when District 1 includes such large communities as Eureka? How do you balance those things when it comes down to deciding which project's a priority and how to address it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we don't consider comments to be like votes for a project, so that doesn't go into the priority. The priorities, we worked with our technical advisory group on this because we do have such a kind of diversity of communities in the district, and wanting to establish a way to prioritize things that felt really fair across all of our communities. So the things that go into it are really like the safety need, also like how many, like for equity, it was how many community destinations there are that are like community services or medical providers, or like jobs organizations, things like that, that low income or underserved populations would be visiting. There's also a preservation element to prioritizing things. So existing facilities that are in poor condition are prioritized over ones that are in fair or good condition. And then there's the mobility aspect to it, where areas where there's a lot of short trips are prioritized over areas that are a lot more long trips. So there is some degree of built out communities being prioritized over like very rural areas, but I think it's still, areas where there's like Gualala, there's a lot of potentially short trips where people are just, going to the grocery store, to the post office, things like that, compared to, way out in like forest lands or something. Those are going to be much lower priority. To address the point about our kind of those map interfaces not being great, unfortunately, doing this entire planning process during the pandemic and not being able to do in-person outreach, I feel like was really detrimental to being able to reach the underserved communities that we wanted to. A couple of years ago, when we were discussing beginning this effort, of course, doing in-person outreach and attending community events and that kind of thing to really accept people's comments in person, or to have, a computer there that we could help people input their comments on. That was what we were planning on doing. And, being entirely online as we are now has really meant that we can't do that. And as soon as we can, and when it's safe to interact in person again, we do plan on doing that. And just because this particular planning effort is concluding, doesn't mean that we'll stop taking input, because projects are like constantly being initiated, and every time we do that, we need to go out to the community and like kind of reevaluate, did we capture all of the needs in the area, and how do we address them in that particular project? So this is really one way that we can set targets statewide and kind of have a starting place when we initiate projects, but more in-depth communication with communities is definitely needed every time we initiate a project in the area.
I see Jennifer Smallwood has a question. Robert, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I have a question too after Jennifer.
Hi, this is Jennifer. I just kind of wanted to expand on the question that we just asked about when you're saying like smaller communities and stuff. Well, like Gualala has a certain number of people in the main part and a certain number of other people outside, but they have a certain other number of people who pass through Gualala and stop and use it vacationing. And so how do you take into account the visitor population? Because it's really impactful on a community like Gualala and surrounding areas. So yeah, in terms of priorities and such.
Good question.
To make sure I understand the question, are you asking if those trips get considered within like looking at areas that have many short trips?
I don't exactly know how you guys measure trips. I'm just saying that I know, having been on the fire department in Timber Cove, that is really a challenge to get the county to understand that, 80% of our calls were visitors. It's like, wait, they're not even paying taxes. It's like you was doing all this work and you're like ignoring the fact that we're doing all these calls. So I'm thinking of a community like Gualala, the impact it might have on their transportation to have visitors. It's really important for Caltrans to take into account that it's not just the 1,000 people that live, right around town and the short trips they take or whatever, but also the pretty significant number of people that come into town and use those same roads and those walkways, and the bicyclists, and just, there's a lot of visitors and they have lots of modes of transportation. And to be able to make sure that Caltrans is aware of those numbers, I'm not sure how you do that, even just by going into different communities and talking to the people.
Yeah, okay, so I can't answer this. Our trips we're using big data actually to get that information on how long the trips are. So this includes looking at things like car GPS units or like your cell phone if it's location enabled, and it's all anonymized. So we can't like follow the particular movements of one person, but we can see collectively like how many trips of any particular distance are occurring within an area. So that would count the visitors in their, their phone GPS or their vehicle GPS.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jennifer, that was a great presentation you made there. Is that something that I wrote down a couple of those websites. Is that something we can see again if we want to by going to that website?
Oh yeah, I can post. I haven't posted the presentation online, but that's a great idea. And I have emailed it to Tom, so I hope he can distribute it to you all along with that fact sheet that I mentioned.
Uh-huh. And then District 1, we're talking about what county?
So it's Del Norte, Humboldt, Lake, and Mendocino.
Okay. And then one more question. That very first picture that you had in your presentation, where was that taken?
That is in.
Oh, with the bike lane.
Yeah, that looked very impressive.
Yeah, I picked up on that too.
And those two mule deer or whatever they were on the right side.
Oh, the Oric one. Yeah.
An Oric. Okay.
Oric.
Yeah, Tom, please forward that to me. I'd like to really look at that. That was interesting what you presented there.
Yeah, and I told Alexis today that while there's hardly anybody here tonight, we will make this, I'll do an excerpt of this presentation tonight and make it available on our YouTube channel and promote that so that people can watch Alexis's presentation and get the details on this and hear the questions that we've been asking. I think it's still really confusing to most people, Alexis. You're so into this thing that I think it's hard to step back, but I think if you try to explain it to your grandma and then have her fill out a survey, you'd get a better idea of what we're trying to tell you. It's a tough go. And I wish you could do sticky notes on a whiteboard this year like you could other years, because that makes a lot of difference, I think. And there's one more thing I'd like you to touch on. I started off by saying this is not part of our streetscape project. There is no project actually in this plan at this point. But you and I had an interesting conversation today about how this might relate to things like extending the sidewalk that we're planning for streetscape up to the mobile home park where our own Melissa Finley lives, or extending a bike lane uphill through the end of town through the 35-mile-per-hour zone where it turns into a 45-mile-per-hour zone just north of town. Could you just comment on that briefly?
Yes, so I know there is the streetscape project and that we're still seeking funding to fully fund the construction of that. But there might be an opportunity because we're going to be having a drainage project on all of Highway 1 in Mendocino County. And like I mentioned, how these needs will be used is when we have projects coming in, we'll review the needs that overlap with those project limits. So since this drainage project is the entire Highway 1, it obviously goes through Gualala, and we can look at adding some of the facilities that would address the needs that have been identified in the streetscape plan or through our surveys to that project. So this is still kind of preliminary because we have a certain amount of targets in the 2024 shop. So we need to see how much we can accomplish within those targets. But I expect that we'll be coming back to you relatively soon to kind of get more in depth about have all the needs been identified? Are there more needs or particular priority of needs if we can't do them all? So there's definitely opportunity within that drainage project to look at both the scope of the streetscape project and then anything even farther north, like you mentioned, that's been identified as a need to incorporate into that drainage project.
That's great. And I'll try to incorporate some feedback from the areas going up to Point Arena and Manchester as well. There, we consider that part of our service area. That's part of our neighborhood. So that's really great. Are there other questions for Alexis?
So this has to do with not the streetscape, but north of that. Like, I know that where I live, I do live at Ocean View Estates at 38851 South Highway 1, and across the street at 38820 South Highway 1 is Junior's. Leaving either one of those parking lots is taking your life in your hands because it's top of a blind hill, and it's where 25 goes to 35, and people going both directions are actually going too fast. and let alone if you're trying to cross the street on foot, that's even more dangerous. That's more like Russian roulette, things like. So is this the kind of thing that would address that?
Yeah, so you can definitely, like, I'm going to write that down and I can add it as a point in our survey. But if you do find that you can take the survey, you can make comments like that. I think maybe I failed to fully address this previously with Tom's comment, but yeah, if you can't, for whatever reason, if you don't feel comfortable taking or can't access the online survey, you can definitely call me and I can just record that myself in our system. Also, if people want to, you know, make their own map or written comments and just mail it to me, that's totally fine as well.
It
So yeah.
was nice going north. There was a sign saying blind driveway, drive carefully.
Okay. So is this more of like when you're driving and trying to pull out, or is it specific to walking and biking? Or
When I tried to pull out to turn left to go downtown, it'll be clear both ways. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, because it's such a short, blind hill, all of a sudden someone will be coming right at me, and I'm already headed out, and I have to gun it to cross into the other lane to keep from getting run over.
And Alexis, there basically aren't many pedestrians there. I actually walk my dog up there every day, and I rarely see anybody else walking. The mobile home park is a senior community, and there aren't many daring seniors there, except maybe Melissa, who would even think about crossing the street.
I have to differ with you. There are people that cross the road to go to Junior's all the time to go to the hardware store.
On foot?
Well, not every day, but regularly, people cross the road to go to Junior's, and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah. So,
come in
you know, one of the things I think Melissa and I can work on here in Gualala is, and maybe Robert can kick in on this too, is getting people at the mobile home estate park to participate in the survey somehow, or to create comments or gather comments from them. So that we can give Alexis some solid feedback from a lot of the residents who do live in that area, and who otherwise are just not going to hear about this.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
We can reach out to them more manually.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I know a lot of the people in the park.
And that helps. And that really helps our whole town, because when we talk about the streetscape project, it's a piece of a pie. And to get the whole pie, we really have to consider what streetscape was supposed to be originally. It was originally supposed to go up there, and it was cut back and narrowed, and got down to the point where we're just trying to hang on to the very basics of the core of the project now. And it's very difficult. And I'm going to get into that in a minute, Alexis. You may want to stick around for that. There's a little update on that from what I told you this morning. But Alexis's work is really important to getting that whole pie together.
Yeah. Yeah, just to like emphasize it is planning level, and it is district wide, and it's just focused on the needs. So when we're initiating projects, that's when we're really getting into like the design details and like specifically what needs to go where, and like what does that facility or that sign look like. So if it's not captured in this plan, like that's okay. I want to do as much as we can, but it's an ongoing conversation.
But you know, it would be a shame if Caltrans went ahead and did a drainage project and didn't include a sidewalk when they could have. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, are we done with this part of the this item?
Yeah, that was very informative, yes.
So I'd like to move on with another part of GCAP right now. I apologize, this isn't on the agenda. This came up today, this afternoon, 20 minutes before the meeting, literally. I had sent an email earlier in the day to Nafili Barrett at MCOG telling her that Robert and I would like to speak with her before the next MCOG meeting. And the council will remember that in April, MCOG gave direction to Frank Demling, the project manager for Streetscape, and his team to come back by late summer with a final concept that they could take action on. And Chairman Younglings reached out a couple of times to Frank and got a comment in, I think it was June, that they didn't have the funding and the staff right then to go ahead with figuring that work and getting that done. But he said later in the summer, we'll do that, maybe in July. And July slipped by pretty quickly. Robert in the real estate business has been really busy this month. I had an operation and I'm back now and going, well, did we do this? And we haven't heard from Mr. Demling about that update, and we were reaching out to find out what's going on. And this afternoon, I got some distressing news. And I'm going to read, I asked for a meeting with Nafili Barrett, and this is the reply I got. And I'm not blaming Nafili for this. I think she's acting in very good faith. She said, I had thought Caltrans would be ready for our August meeting to present revisions, but that isn't the case. The Caltrans design team, headed by Elias Karam, who is in Yuba City, by the way, is an engineer, has had some significant staff changes and shortages over the last couple of months, so they haven't been able to devote the staff to the project that they expected to. Since there's no September MCOG meeting, the next opportunity would be October. I'll be meeting with them next week, and hopefully we'll get an update on the time frame. Since the project won't be on the agenda in August, you're welcome to speak under the public expression if you'd like. We plan to have an informational report on the upcoming STIP cycle, that's a funding cycle, which is related to the Gualala project. So comment could potentially be made under that item as well. I told her that Robert and I would still probably like to speak with her as soon as possible, possibly before she speaks with Caltrans. And I told her that it was bad news that this has been punted down the road again. I didn't use those words, but that's the way I feel. To me, we have a couple of agencies, a state agency and Dow & Associates, which is the administrative staff for MCOG, that really don't feel the urgency about this project that we feel here in this community, where people get hurt on the road in accidents. I expressed this to the MCOG in April rather strongly, and that's when they said they're going to bring this back in late summer, and now it's into the mid-fall. I would like to ask the council's consensus, or whatever you want to do, to support the idea that Robert and I can speak to Nafili and really press this case to get this on the agenda and have a discussion about this in August. The meeting is on August 16th. Some of you may also want to come and make public comments at that meeting, and I can give you the information on how to do that. But I don't want to just go and sound like an angry old man at the MCOG meeting in August 16th. I'd like to see, to go there and say the Gualala Council, speaking on behalf of the community, is extremely disappointed to hear of this further delay and urges MCOG to direct Caltrans to complete the design portion of this project immediately and move on to the engineering phase without further funding for design functions. I don't want to cut the funding short on this project, but we've been going over 2 years and dancing in circles. This project's 27 years old. We know what we want in this project. And if we postpone this again, I will bet you $1 to a donut, or that's not a good comparison anymore, $1 to a penny, how's that? That we will get more comments after they go through the next design cycle, which could take 1.5 years, and bring us back to this point once again. And then somebody will say, well, what about this? And then they'll say, well, we need to get further community input and start the whole thing again. Frankly, personally, as a citizen, I'm a little frustrated with it and want to move on. And I'd like to have, see if the council feels the same way I do on this. I think I just heard Melissa say she does.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just not a priority for Caltrans, and I don't know why, but it's not. And after all these years, I just don't understand why they can't complete the planning and design phase and move on to engineering at this point. I think they've had plenty of time. Now, admittedly, there probably were some issues related to COVID and staffing that has impacted them. We don't know all the details about that, but really, it seems like most of the work has already been done. I mean, what is left to complete? I just don't understand. And I'm feeling really frustrated also that this is not moving forward in a timely manner at this point. So, you know, whatever Tom, you and Robert can do to influence MCOG and push this thing forward, I don't know what else can be done. You know, you have my support for sure.
Thank you, Tom.
It's
Melissa?
Yeah. Like I said, quit talking about it and start building it. They know what they need to do. We told them.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Our council go ahead, Melissa, sorry.
No, that was it. Just shut up and build it.
You know, we had a long meeting in May immediately after the April meeting where Caltrans brought up a couple of new ideas. We gave immediate feedback. We got zero, absolutely no response from Frank Demling or Elias on the thoughts the council presented unanimously at that point. That is community input. That is the point of Gmac, that we represent the community input. And what we were representing was based on many surveys, many years of community meetings, the town plan, and everything that we've always talked about. We're not speaking as individuals or for people, we're speaking for our community. And if there's anybody in the community who wants to take me up on that, I can go through the data and show them what that's based on. But we gave them 4 alternatives that they would find acceptable and didn't even get a response from Caltrans. I'm a little frustrated with that response, lack of response. And I want to make it known to MCOG, which is hiring Caltrans as the contractor in this project. Robert, I'm sorry, I think I cut you off there a moment ago.
It's just, I said all I wanted to say last month's meeting, or maybe even the prior meeting, but it just seems like it's a big vicious circle. It's all coming back around and we're regurgitating this all. And, you know, if it came back to the point where we have no parking on the highway whatsoever, fine, but that's where we started. Okay, it seems like. So we've tried to, and Alexis pointed out so well in her presentation that, you know, we've listened to so much input and community concern on this project. What else is there? It seems like if there's anything else that still comes at us, it's some kind of a stall tactic or something like that to prolong it even further. And that comes from a very small minority out there. So I'm all for, you know, us getting together, Tom, now that I'm a little less busier and pushing on this with the council's backing.
Okay, great. I don't think we need a vote. I don't think we need to talk much more about this among ourselves. Again, I want to offer to the community, if they would like us to have a special meeting and explain this all to them, Robert and I will call a special public meeting of the Streetscape Committee and present all this data to them, or a full council meeting. And we can do that on Zoom, possibly even some small in-person meetings if the situation allows. But I think the more people that know about this, the more community support we show on this, the more this is going to get done. MCOG, the public part of MCOG, the people who sit on the council, they hear us. I'm not sure the administrative side of MCOG is hearing us. We want to make sure Nafili understands what we're saying here. And Robert and I will pass that message along. You know, Nafili is a good person and we appreciate her efforts and her challenges. But we need to get this thing going. And 27 years is just way too long to wait when we see our neighbors getting hurt on the highway. So Alexis, there's a little bit of our frustration. And I know you're going to be meeting with Frank any day now. Feel free to quote me on any part of this, or any member of the council. Feel free to tell Frank that he's pulled the strict one too many times. and we're a little tired of it. It's time to move on. We've finished the public input phase of this, and we need to get into engineering.
Here, here.
So
Tom, on this August 16th meeting, are we looking at a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting on that one?
it's a Zoom meeting, Robert.
Okay.
It's 1:30 on the 16th. People from Gualala could come to this. The agenda has not been posted on the MCOG site yet.
Right.
But if you want to comment at an MCOG meeting, you need to ask for permission in advance. And if you want to participate in a discussion, as Robert and I will for this meeting, you need to ask for that permission in advance, which is part of why I was writing to Nafili today. I encourage anybody who's interested in this project to step up and help get this message across. There's strength in numbers, fortis in unitate, strength in unity when we all move together. So let's make sure MCOG has no illusions about how our community feels about this latest delay in a 27-year-old project. All right, thank you. I'm done venting.
Okay, should we go on to 5C? Housing and economic development.
I have no report.
I see.
After all that, I'm all talked out. I have nothing new to report on housing and economic development. I wish I did.
Okay.
I'm eager to see new council members come on so that we can start doing some more work in that area. I understand one of our new candidates has some substantial experience in this.
Good.
So that's great.
Okay. Number D, or letter D, electric vehicle charging station. Don, anything new there?
Well, not really, but I've got an idea, but I need to present it to the community center board probably. And I've been having trouble figuring out who to contact to be able to do that. I am a member of the community center. So supposedly you need to be a member to talk, in front of the board. But I think I have a fairly attractive proposal for them. The details of which I'm not going to share at this point, so I'm still working on them. But I think there's a real possibility we could have something set up at the community center, which would be a pretty darn good location for a charging station. And it would not be a fast charger. It's just too expensive, really, to put in a fast charger unless it is highly subsidized. I'm still holding out some hope for eventually a fast charger somewhere else in Gualala. But again, that would probably be totally dependent on funding, external funding from the federal government with Biden's infrastructure plan, for example, or new state funds or something, Whereas this proposal that coming up with for the community center is not dependent on any of that. So hopefully that can move forward quicker to get us something here in Gualala. I think anybody who's paying any attention to what's going on in the automotive industry now realizes that the future is electric. And so it's not only the future, it's starting now. We see more and more EVs or plug-in hybrids on the road. And that's just, the numbers are just going to grow. And we have nothing in Gualala to charge these vehicles up with. Now you can drive to Point Arena, another 15 miles. But we want to keep people, I think, in Gualala, charging their vehicles and doing some shopping or, buying things at the stores, whatever. I think that's what we want. We want an economic benefit from this. And I hope people understand that that's very real, especially with a level 2 charger, which is what I would be proposing for the community center. They take a little longer to charge, but for a lot of people, that's fine. You know, you may not, if you have a EV with a very large battery, you may not fully recharge it, but you may not need to. You just need another 20, 40, 60 miles range in order to complete your trip if you're going north or you're going south, whatever. Anyway, in order to support the rollout of electric vehicles over the next decade, we need lots of more charging stations, and they need to be everywhere. And we need them here in Gualala. And I'm also not saying that community center is the only thing we need to do. To me, that's just a start. If we can get that going, we need other charging areas in Gualala. So hopefully within the next month, I'll be able to refine my plan and present something to the community center and see what they think. And then I'll get back to you with the details.
I'll help you find out when there's a board meeting for the board of directors.
Okay, Robert, that would be great.
Okay, that might help. Okay, thank you, Don. Telecommunications Committee?
Yeah, I have a quick update on that. And I don't know if Don has anything. We haven't met this month, but YouTube views, we only had 25 views, which is fitting for our meeting last month because it was about a quarter as long as some of our meetings. We had very few items on the agenda, but 25 is fine. We still had 142 the prior month. We're coming up for a renewal on our contract for Zoom. It's an annual contract, and I want to recommend renewal. It's only $149 a year. It looks like we're going to keep this, even if we could go back to physical meetings, we're going to keep Zoom somehow. Don and I will have to work out how. But it seemed like a good time to do a little research. And this is our 25th recorded session that we're producing on Zoom. We have 24 clips on YouTube ranging from just a few minutes to over 4 hours. That includes the 2 COVID workshops we produced in conjunction with RCMS and the school district and others. And I just think this has worked out. This has exceeded my expectations by a mile. I think everybody sees the value of this now. And I was also going to suggest, Don, that we put a link to our YouTube channel at the top of our minutes page so that people know that they can go there and watch the meetings. Since we don't always post the minutes promptly, or we don't always have a recording available on there as well as on the YouTube channel. But people can always go to that channel and see what we've been up to. And we're always glad to hear from them in person at meetings, but at least then they can make comments there too that we can see and we will record. Don, do you have anything you want to add for this?
No, I don't have anything to add this month, no.
Okay, great. Then I think we're ready to move on, Robert. Unless somebody objects, I'm going to go ahead and renew the contract. I still haven't billed for last year. I need to submit an invoice for a couple $100 and an invoice for $149 for the coming year.
Well, please send that to me and I'll do that, okay?
I will do that. Thank you.
Get you reimbursed for last year and hopefully will. And then we'll definitely get that one paid for this year, okay? Because I'm always
good deal.
I'm always submitting the invoices for Mary, so I'll submit that invoice too, and we'll hopefully get that paid. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But
good. Thank you.
I agree. We should re-up on that. Okay, and it's down to our last council matter, the Water Ad Hoc Committee consisting of Don and I. This topic, we could probably go on for hours on this one, but we'll keep it concise since we're getting late here, okay?
Well, do you want to talk about the request from the county OES office on the water supplies?
Yeah, in fact, that escaped my mind already. I'm sorry, Tom, but I don't even have any literature on that at the moment. Do you have it?
I've got it in hand. You want me to do it?
Okay, thank you.
The OES, which is part of the Sheriff's Department,
Office of Emergency Services, right?
Office of Emergency Services, the coordinator is Brent Blazer. And Brent sent us a really great letter asking for assistance from the MACs in Mendocino County to distribute large donations of bottled water to areas that need it. It wasn't pointed out to any particular areas. However, he said the challenge becomes in finding locations where it can be shipped, offloaded, stored, and distributed to the public. And he needs to identify potential community partners. A pallet of water is 72 to 84 cases of water, and a truckload is 12 to 22 pallets of water. They're normally 54 inches tall, 48 by 40, and it's heavy. So figure 2,200 pounds, you'll need a forklift and a pallet jack or something like that. Supermarkets have those kinds of things, and construction yards. The state would like to receive requests from nonprofits. We have a food pantry in Gualala at the Baptist Church. Families in need, and we need some system of organizing of how to distribute it, which the community center has good experience in this. So one of the things he said, and I can't find this part of it in here, but it was something about the most difficult part is finding places in rural locations, and meaning Gualala. We're one of those trouble spots where they have trouble getting water to, or some of the Indian reservations up by Covelo. It's tough to get water out to everybody who needs it in this county, but there are people in this county that need it now and can't afford a $600 truckload of water as long as they're available, and they may not be available. There's a task force looking into how long that water is going to be available for purchase. I don't know what happens when those trucks stop rolling, but we do need to get the mechanism in place to have emergency water supplies available should we need them. And I'm wondering if the council has ideas how to do this. We used to have the ad hoc emergency committee, and this would be right up their alley of reaching out to these different groups and finding out how to do this, talking to the community center at the Baptist Church, the supermarkets, or whoever else can help distribute water. Should the need arise, and should we need to take pallets and pallets of water and store it safely somewhere. So that's what the request is. I just wanted to give that to you, and I'll let you lead that conversation, Robert.
Yeah.
This isn't even my committee.
No,
So.
and Don, that was something that I forwarded to Tom, thinking that we might want to add it to the agenda, but then we decided that it's just best we talk about it under the Water Ad Hoc Committee. And then here, it's been already 2-3 weeks ago that this came in to all MACs in the county to see if there's a way that we MACs can talk to our communities and find, I guess, distribution locations for this free water, basically, and get it to those that are needy. So you brought up grocery stores, Tom. I mean, there's got to be a lot of people out there that buy water or that need water, that we could help them by finding locations where they could come to pick the water up. So Don and I could maybe talk about that further and deal with that on our own and try to find locations such as the community center in town or the grocery stores, and then get the word out.
I have a thought. Yeah. The community center during pay intake, there were so many people there.
Right. And like Tom was saying, it's the storage matter. Where do you put these huge pallets of lots and lots of water? Yeah, everybody wants some, but you also have to have the space for it, and the willingness from the property owner or organization, whoever it is, to have that delivered to their location, I think.
And the problem with supermarkets is they sell water. This isn't water for people who can easily buy water. This is water for people who desperately need water and maybe can't afford to go buy water. or don't have a facility to take it
Yeah,
home.
and I,
So there's a mechanism we need to build here. Maybe this gets to be a crisis in a month or 6 weeks from now. And now we have an opportunity to ramp up a plan of what we're going to do when that moment arrives.
yeah, that's a point I was going to bring up. I personally, I'm not aware of a desperate need for drinking water yet here in Gualala. Now, that may come up, but obviously, as you mentioned, anybody with any level of means, any kind of income, can easily buy water, and if they can afford it, they should buy it. And if this water is meant to be free for people in need, then how do we determine the need of these people? I mean, it shouldn't just be free water. Anybody can come and get it.
Right.
I don't believe in that. I believe it should only go to those truly in need who cannot afford water, or who don't have water. So how do we determine that? Where do we store it? I mean, there's a lot of questions that this raises that we haven't dealt with. We don't have a community storage facility, and we kind of need one. I mean, it would be great to have one, to have emergency equipment on hand, food, or N95 masks, water, whatever. But we have nothing here in Gualala that I'm aware of, where we could store emergency items like that are needed rarely, but they very well may be needed at some point. Now, in terms of
I have a suggestion.
People whose wells have run dry, and I guess maybe that is starting to happen here in some cases. If those people can't afford to buy water at all, then yeah, this could be for them. But their needs might be a lot greater than what we're talking about here in terms of distribution of water.
And I have a suggestion that we take a look at last year when there were food shortages and a lot of people who couldn't get out, and what they did at that point to get food. And you look at the groups who were helping them, and maybe we could, help facilitate a Zoom call with the head of Coastal Seniors and the food bank and the community center, the grocers and the fire chief. And, I don't know. I'll leave it to you and Robert to deal with that, Don. But if I can help set up the Zoom call or publicize it, certainly, call on myself and Melissa. I'm sure she'd be happy to spread the word to her neighbors as well. And we'll just figure this out as it goes along. I don't want you guys to feel like you're alone, but I think this is something where we can play a uniting role and help build a structure that could be in place for when this need really surfaces sincerely.
Yeah, because if we wait too long and it's too late, then we try to get the water. It'd be better to be able to have it on hand and somehow administer it to those needy folks that we would like to see get it. A warehouse would be nice if there was some kind of a facility like that, like Don was alluding to. I mean, but you can't even find a storage unit in town anymore because they're all booked up. Everybody, there's so few facilities like that. Maybe we have to reach out to Point Arena. I don't know. But Don and I, we can work on it a little bit.
Well,
Jennifer,
question that wasn't clear to me, but is this water provided free? Or
no,
does somebody have to pay for it?
I skipped over that. The letter starts, I'm writing to request MAC assistance. Mendocino County may have an opportunity to receive donated bottled water in large supplies. I'm not sure who that's coming from, whether it's coming from the state or from the manufacturers or who. But, if that supply is available and if the need exists in our community, let's find that out. Let's make sure we have the infrastructure he's talking about and be ready to receive it when the need is here. And I see Jennifer Smallwood has her hand raised. I'm glad to see Jennifer at this meeting tonight and having so much participation. I'm sure she has a good idea to share with us.
Okay.
This is fun. I love this. What was the two things? Oh, one is I heard this phrase the other day, and it was about it was like this home that takes care of trans people or something, and her phrase was lead with trust. And that's kind of what I thought of when Robert was saying, how do we decide who gets free water if we, if we get free water, how do we make sure that people who really need it get it, and not just anybody? And I think when, it makes a good impression on people if you would do that, just lead with trust and trust that people who actually, you put it forward that way, that, this is for people who need it. And then you have to trust that that's who's going to show up. I think you can get mired in a whole kind of legislation of who's needy and stuff, and that might slow the process and also kind of put a sour taste in people's mouth about the Gmac if you, take on that, role as a purveyor of goods to the community in that sort of way. And then the other thing was about, you started talking about, you wish you had emergency supplies and stuff. I think it's true that Timber Cove has a Red Cross trailer up at Rotnaling, and you could talk oh God, I'm gonna forget his last name. He's the chief of Timber Cove Fire Department, but he would know, and maybe he could steer you guys in the direction of getting of a Red Cross trailer for Gualala. If you don't already have one, maybe the fire department has one, and you just maybe not know about it. But yeah, it has all kind of cool stuff in it. Like you're talking about blankets and all kind of things. So you might chase that down with the Red Cross, and they just park it. You have to give some city property somewhere where you can park it, or not necessarily city property, but somebody who would let it be there. Yeah, so that was my thing.
No, thank you, Jennifer. I like the idea of working through the fire departments because we've got many smaller districts around here. 3 of them in southern Mendocino County. We've got the Sea Ranch Fire Department, and then down in Timber Cove. So that might be a way to go, Don. But we'll work on it a little bit, and I'll get you a copy of that letter that I received and then sent out to Tom when we were working on the agenda. Okay, Don? But yeah, it's all
Yeah,
about
sounds good,
water here.
Robert.
Huh? Sorry.
That sounds good, Robert. Yeah.
Okay. We're getting late, and we thought we'd maybe be able to hold it to an hour and a half, 2 hours, but water is a big issue, and I wanted to just see if we could put something up on the screen that just shows where we're at this year compared to last year. Last year was already a heavy duty, huge water drought year in essence. And here this year, we're even more in a drought. And I don't know how many of you have read the ICO yet today again, but there was a good article in there about the North Gualala Water Company installing a new storage tank on Pacific Woods Road. I don't know how long that's going to be away, but and here, Don, go ahead and tell us about a picture you took here. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, well, this is the North Fork as it enters the main branch of the Gualala River. This dry as a bone right there. And that's the temporary bridge that GRT built for the logging operation that is imminent in the floodplain.
Now, those of you that are familiar with this, right behind this temporary bridge is the old historic Green Bridge. And
correct.
Back behind the Green Bridge is where the North Fork comes from, and where our water source for the community, for the town is, where North Gualala Water Company has their main well number 4, and where we get 85-90% of the town's water. Now look how the rest of the river looks after the pumping station. It is, I've never in the 35 years I've been up here seen no flow at this location. And so this is very dire. I go to the USGS website a lot, which is the United States Geological Survey website. And you can see the measurements that are taken just upstream from that green bridge that's behind the bridge that Don just had a picture of. And that's an official gauge measuring the cubic feet per second that are going by this gauge. and it is at historic lows. And so, you know, I want to stress and we should, our water company should be doing some of this, but I think they do on the website. We're in a mandatory conservation period right now, but we got a long ways to go before we get, well, rains at the end of October, whenever they usually happen, if they happen. But we really got to stress the need to conserve, and there's maybe even a possibility we got to go into a rationing mode. I don't know, but when you look at that USGS gauge measurement for flow just upstream of from where Don took this picture, it's getting really scary. I don't think there's an infinite amount of water where we have our pumping station, and the community should be aware of this. And I think Steve McLaughlin in the ICO did a good job today in his article about water. You know, you can read about it when you get a copy of the ICO, but the 200,000 gallon water storage tank that North Gualala Water Company is undertaking on Pacific Woods Road there is a good thing. So the more they can do to expand our source and to have storage, the better we'll all be off as a community. So this was taken from two periods of time. One last year on August 5th, 2020, where we had a flow of 3.17 cubic feet per second at the USGS gauge. So that's just below what the recommended flow amount is, which is the 4 cubic feet per second, is what's needed to keep all wildlife or so-called the norm that we need to have enough water in the river to keep the wildlife and fish and everything alive. And then if you look at the next screen, or the next gauge measurement is from this year, today at 10 a.m. And it's virtually half of what we had last year on this same day, 1.58 cubic feet per second. So it's something that we need to be watching every day and seeing where this level is going to, because you know, we got to do something. Whether it's rationing or not, I don't know, but that's for somebody else to decide. But we as a MAC or as the local town council are trying to bring awareness to this. And that's why I wrote down there conserve, and we really have to stress that. So that's my portion of the water ad hoc committee. And then if anything else you wanted to add, Don, or if anybody else wants to chime in, please do.
Well, the scary thing about these numbers that that we put up here is that there's almost 3 more months of dry weather without rain. We're in a very tough situation, as far as I can tell. I don't know how long though that well on the North Fork can keep pumping reliably, because that aquifer obviously is fed by the North Fork.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember, but when the very first meeting I went to and we had a discussion on water moratorium, I said, you know what? There's not enough water for us. We don't need more buildings. We don't need more people, because this is good. It's going to get much, much worse. We're going to wind up not having enough water for the people that live here. We're going to wind up not having enough water for anyone who currently lives here.
Right. And there was
hopefully that won't happen for another 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah, see, there was even a quote in the paper where David Bauer was quoted as saying North Gualala Water Company wells are producing the same as they usually do. How much longer will that happen, that we can still produce enough water to supply the existing population? And we know,
Yeah.
we know full well that the state might instigate some further restrictions on the current water rights permit that the North Gualala Water Company has. In fact, I was looking through some literature on the county website, the Board of Supervisors, and Ted Williams even warned the county. He was quoted as saying, we've got 3 major emergencies, and COVID and our fire situation aren't going to be as severe as possibly water. So,
Yeah.
you know, we think it's
Which
just a
is
given.
Which is why 4 years ago when people said, oh, but we need to get rid of the water moratorium because we need to have more people moving in. I'm saying, no.
Thank goodness we have the moratorium. I mean, what we have to worry about is there's more and more use of this water that we're limited to because more and more people want to move here, and every facility where people can live, they want to live here because it seems to be so safe. Not only for the wealthier that are buying up all the real estate, but for those that need to work here and live here because that's where they live. That's where they are. It's dire, folks, and I don't know how much we can stress it, Don.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that we set up the ad hoc water committee several months ago. We set it up to hold a forum. I can't think of a better time to hold that forum than now and get these voices in here about what we're going to do. It's more of a short-term crisis now than I had expected or any of us could have predicted, but it's certainly up there. And if you want to hear the most tone-deaf thing I heard today, it was somebody at Sea Ranch, well, not actually at Sea Ranch, somebody who moved out of Sea Ranch and lives in another part of the state now that Robert knows well, and is a former member of Gmac, suggesting when people were talking about the difficulty of washing their Teslas, washing their new cars, suggested that we, Sea Ranchers, build a car wash in Gualala. Quote, who's up for that? Unquote. And talking about using recycled water, but even so, I read this and my jaw dropped and my eyebrows raised. And I thought, is this person on the same planet as I am, much less across the river from me? It's just a crazy thought.
What's that?
They got water to burn.
Yeah, I suggest folks, and if anybody wants to wash their Teslas, you spit on them because that's what you got to use.
Well, now Sea Ranch could actually have enough water to run a car wash. They should put one in at the lodge.
Yeah, I also, I didn't even want to get into the issue of presuming that, oh, we'll do this in Gualala. That was such a condescending comment that it was the secondary thought in my mind of how inappropriate that was. But I've had it up to here with anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers, and drought deniers. Let's call it what it is. A dirty car should be a sign of pride right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
One other point about this water situation we're in, which is now directly related to what looks like it's totally approved now, timber harvest plan, dogwood along the floodplain of the Gualala River, is that apparently the logging company is going to be pumping 25,000 gallons a day of water out of the Gualala River to tamp down the dust on the logging roads. 25,000 gallons.
There's an eloquent letter about that very issue in the ICO today. I encourage you all to read it.
Is there? Okay.
Got the letter by Peter
yeah.
Peter By. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's what I'm getting this from.
I should be denied on moral grounds because then the rest of us need that water to stay alive.
Well, yeah, I mean, something should supersede their ability to log when the public needs the water for just basic survival needs, the logging can wait, if at all. It shouldn't even be happening.
Yeah,
I
Joe, I want to go to sleep.
Yeah, we should. In the essence of time, let's move on. The water is, what can we do as our little old Mac here? But we've talked enough about water. I mean,
Yeah,
we've got to be conscious about it. So let's in the essence of time, let's move on. Is that all right with everyone?
Yes, absolutely. Got down to permit review assignments.
Take down our blood pressure a little bit and all that, okay? So we have permit review assignments. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 on the agenda. That fifth one that came in is, what is that one again? Well, let me get
6E 2020 0074.
2020-0034, yeah. That is a coastal development permit for vegetation management along 28 linear miles of PG&E's Elk Gualala 80, or what does it say, 60 kilowatt or kV power line. So that ties in with our electrical discussions this evening about transmission lines, doesn't it?
Yes, very
Yeah,
much
sounds
so.
like it.
Since I already have some contacts on that, I could be one of the people on that.
Okay,
Maybe Don wants to join me again on the following up on PG&E.
okay, so when I get,
Yeah, I'll join you. I think, Tom, you and I are the PG&E team at this point, huh?
I think so.
you haven't really seen this yet, but let me get it to you, or you look at the website of the county and you'll see it there, okay? But the big,
Yeah, we'll find
the
it.
big thing came in today, 2020-0034. Okay, but I got to that one first because it just came in, but there's the other 4 on the agenda, and I'd like some participation on that. What I was thinking was the first one has to do with constructing a 120-foot cell tower on the Anderson property, 45315 Country Club Way. I was hoping Melissa could participate on that one, and Dawn. And then the other, there's 2 that are renewals that I think we as a council and maybe I could take the lead on. And that's the 6B and 6D. One is a coastal development permit renewal. The other one is basically a renewal too, but I don't see the R behind it. The Land Shark Development LLC. And then 6C, I was thinking that maybe Tom and I could take the CDP 2021-0031 Rhythm and Win, take that one on. And then we would have
Yeah, okay.
all those assignments taken care of. And then here you and Don, Tom are taking on this new one too. So is everybody okay with that?
Yes, I can work on that with you, Robert, and I'll work on the PG&E with Don.
Okay. And Melissa and Don on the cell tower, and then I'll kind of take the lead on the 2 renewals. Okay, everyone?
Okay.
I'll try.
Thank you, thank you. And then we'll have reinforcements hopefully coming soon, and then we'll be able to distribute these CDPs a little bit more fairly. Okay, it's that.
Right.
But we got a lot of them coming up. We've got 3 new ones and then the 2 renewals. So I'm glad you're okay with all those assignments. We're basically to the end here with having done that. I can give Mary Mobert's report real quick. I will be submitting her bill to the county. Her June statement, she worked 17.5 hours for a total invoice of $265.86. That other item that I was mentioning earlier, having to pay our PO box, I went ahead and paid that out of my own funds. So I'll be trying to get that reimbursed, Tom, along with whatever you send me on the renewal there of the, what is it? Zoom. Okay. So I'll send that to the appropriate person, that bill too, if you get it to me. And then we're basically down to Vice Chair Murphy's report, Chair Youngling's report, and adjournment.
I can pass. I've passed. I've said enough this evening, so I'll pass on my comments tonight.
I'm fine with that too. I'm exhausted. So we'll leave it up to Melissa to take us through the adjournment proceedings. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to sleep. My motion to adjourn. Good night.
Oh, thank you very much. Wait for the vote. Do we have a second on that motion?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, Don will second the motion to adjourn. Melissa,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Tom. And Robert.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, you guys. Thanks very much for hanging in there. It was a longer one than we thought, but
Right.
went well. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.